Morning, everyone. Afternoon, evening, whatever it is, wherever you are. This is English 365 in Colombia. And today we're going to talk about Gabriel García Márquez. Before we do that, I'd like to make it clear we don't edit these videos. We think it's important that you hear English as it's spoken on the street, in business, wherever, rather than a polished version. Okay, so that being said, this is Colombia. We live in the coffee region, so you'll hear a lot of birds, you'll hear a lot of roosters, whatever. This is our video on Gabriel García Márquez. Now, when I first came to Colombia, two things were said to me. Colombians said two things to me very regularly. They said, you have to listen to, or rather you have to watch, Betty La Fea, and you have to read Gabriel García Márquez. Now, I tried to watch Betty La Fea. I really did. And it was a little bit difficult. And as an Englishman, there's the rooster I told you about. He never stops. As an Englishman, it was difficult to watch. And I'll explain why in another video. That's another video. So anyway, I read Gabriel García Márquez. And this video is as a result of reading 100 Years of Solitude. Okay, if you can hear me over the roosters. The early years. Gabriel García Márquez was born in Colombia in 1927. He grew up in a small town surrounded by stories and legends. So he was raised, surrounded by roosters, no doubt, enclosed, enveloped, fenced in, encircled. Similar synonyms to surrounded. Some of these verbs fit, some of them don't. It's just to give you an idea of the alternatives. And obviously some of the Spanish that you see on the screen isn't always a direct translation. It's not the correct translation because, writing in Spanish isn't the same as writing in English. But anyway, it'll give you some idea. Passed down, stories and legends passed down by his grandparents, inherited from his grandparents, told, recounted by his grandparents and by roosters. He was always fascinated by the rich tradition of his culture, and this would later influence his writing. Fascinated, amazed, intrigued, spellbound. Now, as a young man, he moved to Bogota to study law, but eventually dropped out. He quit, left, packed up, or packed in, you'll hear. Gave up, gave in. But he dropped out of law school to pursue a career in journalism. He was employed by various newspapers and magazines in Colombia and Venezuela, covering a wide range of topics, including politics, culture, and sports. Now, he claimed Ernest Hemingway and William Faulkner as major influences during his early years as a writer. He claimed, he quoted, he said, you could say he simply said that Ernest Hemingway and Faulkner were major influences of his. His first book, it wasn't a success, at the time it wasn't well received. So he published his first book. He delivered his first book. He presented his first book in 1955. And it wasn't well received by his critics. by critics in general. It was not well accepted by critics. However, he didn't let this discourage him. He continued to write. In 1967, he published 100 Years of Solitude, which was an immediate success. This was instantly a success. And it's considered, it's thought of, it's spoken of as his masterpiece. Rooster's going crazy again. So this novel tells the story of 7 generations of the Buendia family in a fictional town, the fictional town of Macondo. Now, he had a strong interest in politics throughout his life. He was a committed socialist. In 1982, he won the Nobel Prize in Literature, becoming the first Colombian and the 4th Latin American to win the award. He was recognized, he was accepted, acknowledged for his novels and short stories, in which the fantastic and the realistic are combined in a richly composed world of imagination, reflecting a continent's life and conflicts. Combined, mixed, joined, composed, fabricated, a richly imagined world. Now, he never let anybody adapt 100 Years of Solitude into a film. He actually said that if he did hand this over to Hollywood and say, right, turn this into a movie, write me a script, he said they'd probably put Robert Redford in the starring role. And what he said was, we don't have relatives that look like Robert Redford. So he didn't think it was going to be a realistic portrayal. So he never let anyone adapt 100 Years of Solitude into a film, into a movie. He was denied visas throughout his life into the US. He was denied visas into the US until well into the election of Bill Clinton. So allowed, permitted. He never let anyone adapt 100 Years of Solitude. He never allowed anyone. He never permitted anyone. Denied visas. He was banned, blocked, refused visas. So he didn't just write 100 Years of Solitude. Throughout his career, Marquez wrote numerous stories, numerous novels, short stories, non-fiction works, including Love in the Time of Cholera, The Autumn of the Patriarch. He wrote for newspapers and magazines, and he supported leftist movements in Latin America. So he wrote, he penned, he authored, supported, he backed, he favored, and he promoted. So, on to 100 Years of Solitude. Now, this was first published in 1967, and since then has been widely regarded as a landmark work of magical realism. Regarded, could be, thought of, acclaimed as a landmark work of magical realism. The novel tells the story of the Buendia family, whose patriarch, Jose Arcadio Buendia, established, set up the mythical town of Macondo. The story began with the arrival of Jose Arcadio Buendia and his wife, Ursula, in Macondo. They lived in a small hut. They had many children. Jose was a curious man who was always searching for the truth, and he often conducted experiments in his laboratory. So he lived in a small hut, he existed, shared a small hut. He carried out experiments, conducted experiments, managed experiments, organized experiments. And the family lived in Macondo for generations. And throughout the years, they experienced many events. They saw many events. They lived through many events and circumstances that shaped their lives, that formed their lives, that impacted their lives. One of the most significant events was the arrival of the banana company, a banana company, which brought modernity and change to the town. So shaped, you could say formed, impacted, brought, delivered, supplied, imported, transported. So the company also brought, as well as bananas and commerce, it brought violence and conflict, which eventually concluded in the downfall of Macondo. Now, the family also suffered many personal losses and hardships. One of the sons went into solitude after his wife and children were killed. The daughter, the most beautiful daughter, floated away into the sky. This is obviously not a factual story. It's been called magical realism. But yeah, so the daughter floated away into the sky and became a celestial body. So floated, rose into the sky, ascended into the sky. Amaranta, who was once in love with Aureliano, died of a broken heart. So despite all these losses, the Buendia family still lived and loved. Marquez joined the past and present expertly throughout the novel, creating a mixture of memories and time. So loved, adored, cherished. We often say someone was beloved. Joined, merged, united, attached, formally amalgamated. He also examined the themes of solitude, love and loss, and how they affected the lives of the Buendia family, how they impacted, how they touched on the lives of the Buendia family. So in conclusion, 100 Years of Solitude was a beautifully written novel that had a lasting impact on the literary world. Marquez's imaginative and lyrical prose captured the essence of the human experience, described the essence, realized the essence, and spoke to timeless themes of love, loss, and memory, described endless themes, articulated, expressed. It remained one of the greatest works of magical realism. It was and still is a must-read for anyone interested in Latin American literature. He lived most of his life in Mexico City, but he maintained close ties with his homeland of Colombia. He kept close ties with his homeland of Colombia. He was married to Mercedes Barcha for more than 50 years. They had 2 sons. He passed away in 2014. He died in 2014. But his work continued to be celebrated and read by people around the world. So he passed away, passed on, he died. His work continued to be celebrated, carried on, persisted, repeated, still is celebrated. His legacy in literature is undeniable, and his books are considered classics of Latin American literature. His death was a loss for literature, and his works will continue to be read and studied for generations to come. They'll be enjoyed for generations to come. He's generally considered the most popular and perhaps the best writer in Spanish since Cervantes. 100 Years of Solitude went on to sold over 45 million copies. Okay, that's everything I have. Thanks for watching. As ever, don't forget to subscribe. If you'd like a free demo with us, the number's there, WhatsApp 321-311-8620. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.